Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining this episode of Roadmap to Rare, our podcast where we discuss the rare disease journey through real stories, real challenges, and research. On today's episode, we're joined by Jennifer Sills, president and founder of CSNK2A1 Foundation, which is dedicated to finding a cure for Okur-Chung Neurodevelopmental Syndrome, or OCNDS, and enhancing the lives of those affected. So welcome, Jennifer, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. Thank you for the intro. I'm Jennifer Sills. I always say I live near San Francisco, California. I have two children, 17 and 15, and my 17-year-old Jules is the one that has Okur-Chung Neurodevelopmental Syndrome.
Okay, well, good. So it kind of dovetails us right back into it. If you want to walk us through the process of your daughter's OCNDS diagnosis, and then what was the journey like for you guys and your family?
Sure. You know, when Jules was born, she had things going on with her, things that were wrong. You know, she had a club foot, she had hip dysplasia, difficulty feeding, she cried all the time. But they were things that seemed like, manageable. They weren't life-threatening. And everyone said that, she would just outgrow it. And I remember even at 6 weeks, she didn't really smile very much, or it was hard to get her to smile. But also she was like in a pelvic harness, like I said, she had this positional foot deformity that had to come back. But really, as time went on, she wasn't reaching her milestones. And at 1, it was almost as if when she would look at me, she didn't know who I was. And so we knew something was going on. And it's funny, I remember back, and I don't know if you have any of these moments where we have this video of her and she's 9 months old and she's babbling like crazy. And we're both saying to each other, my husband and I, oh, she's going to be an early talker. And lo and behold, that jargon just became more complex, but really never became words until she was 11 or so.
Yeah. The babbling are just trying to get our attention for different stuff. And yeah, like when you say she looked at you like you weren't there, was it kind of like almost through you, or like a quizzical?
Yeah, it's almost like she didn't treat me any different than sometimes, normally kids, like if they see their parent, they'll light up because they know like that's their person.
Sure.
And so, yeah, and it's funny because I do oddly enough tear up, because it wasn't until she was 11 or 12 when I was asking my husband, we were switching roles. He was putting her down to bed, and he said to me, oh, Jules is asking for you. And I'm like, come on, like she's never said mama or dada in her life. And I'm like, come on, just do your job. Like, seriously, I have some other things I need to get done. It's your turn tonight.
Stop trying to get out of it.
Right. And I'm like, no. And he's like, no, really, Jen, she's saying mama. And so I went in there and she was calling me mama. And like at that moment,
that's getting me.
Like, she knows that I'm her mama, and she knows like that I'm her person.
Yeah.
And so it's funny though, because she's 17 now and she has not stopped saying mama. Like some of my favorite moments of the day are when she's saying like mama Hawaii, mama airplane, and she's yelling it from her bedroom,
Oh, that's awesome.
It really never gets old, because it's a milestone we never thought she would reach, right? Most kids, we take it for granted. My son's 15 now. It's like he went through mama, mom, and now it's bruh,
Bruh. Everybody's a bruh.
So, yeah. So, with Jules, it's interesting because you're asking about just diagnosis, is that she wasn't diagnosed until she was 7.
Oh, wow.
Of having Okur-Chung. And as I was saying, by the time she was 1, we knew, obviously something was different. She wasn't reaching her milestones. She had a low muscle tone. She had like still some difficulty feeding. So when we finally got a diagnosis, our first one was when she was 2 years old, and they said she had autism, and they said she had PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like not otherwise specified as a diagnosis?
We don't know what. That's fun.
But the one thing that it unlocked for us was services. So we were happy to have the autism diagnosis. She still does have autism, but I always felt like it was autism plus, plus, plus. We kept going back to the doctor, and over the years, finally, whole exome sequencing became available and readily available. And they did it, and they said, only, 10% of the time do we get a hit. And 6 weeks later, they called and told us that there was just a paper that had come out identifying 5 other children in the world, and that Jules, to their knowledge, was the 6th person to be diagnosed with it.
Wow.
And so I said, okay, well, what do we do now? And it was basically like, well, you could call the kind of author on the paper and let us know what you find out, and good luck.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I get that.
Right. And it was so funny because I was like, well, I was a literature major at Berkeley. I'm an attorney. So I thought, well, how hard could this be? And I sat down to read the paper, and this was my first lesson, like in Rare Disease 101, which is just because
Sure.
you have a diagnosis doesn't mean you have any answers. And then when, I went back to the internet to search, is there a group? What information is out there? And yeah, I couldn't believe it. There was nothing. And so I did take their advice, and I called Dr. Wendy Chung, who at the time was at Columbia University. And when I spoke with her, we got through 4 questions. And at that time, she sort of broke it down and gave me the cold, hard facts, which were no one was going to be studying this, and that families needed to shoulder the burden of pushing forward rare disease research. And, at that time, she gave me marching orders: start a foundation, find 60 families, make a mouse model, fund basic research, fundraise like crazy,
You're just
and
writing down everything you can. Yep.
right.
Okay.
And so I said to her, I can't do the research, but I can bring people together. And at the time too, I was thinking about how the doctor had said, good luck. And I was thinking to myself, well, luck really isn't a very good strategy.
Yeah.
But it made me think of like my favorite saying, which is luck favors the prepared. And really, that's what we've been doing the past 8 years, is preparing for when treatments come available, gene therapies that are amenable to Okur-Chung, that we will be able to take advantage of them right away.
Yeah. I mean, also the luck favors the bold. The people want to go out there and be a part of it. But if you're prepared and bold, you just open up everything for all the families.
That's lovely.
I feel like if I'm better prepared, I can talk to it better, and I can really do whatever with it. But it's been awesome to have such a great group of people that's been built. Yes, their children have OCNDS, but like how all the families are brought together, how the environment of everybody, it's really kind of a beautiful thing where how's your child, but also how are you? How are you, as a parent, how are you doing? And then at the same time, it's nice to hear like, oh my gosh, we had the exact same thing with my kid. Like, oh, okay, it's not just me.
Right.
On a lot of it.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine being the 6th person, like, okay, there's at least a few that I can talk to, but then trying to do everything else that you've done so far is amazing to see. Which dovetails nicely into kind of our thesis for today. We're kind of talking more about the foundation that helps to move on education, funding for research, keeping everything together. And so I know you mentioned that Wendy said, yes, start a foundation. And you did, which is incredible. I couldn't even imagine starting something like that. But so you started the CSNK2A1 Foundation, which helps support Okur-Chung Neurodevelopmental Syndrome, or OCNDS. Why the tongue-tied difference between the foundation and the syndrome?
Oh, that's such a good question. We actually get a lot of complaints about the name, first of all, the CSNK2A1 Foundation, because it's a mouthful. You've already gotten a syndrome name of Okur-Chung Neurodevelopmental Syndrome. And you're like, wait, there's a hyphen, and where is that? But when I first actually met with Wendy, she told me it was really common for syndrome names to change over time. depending on sort of what you discover about the syndrome and things like that. So it's sometimes just sort of a placeholder.
Mm.
And with CSNK2A1, which is the gene that's affected that causes Okur-Chung, when we were thinking about when people first get the diagnosis, they get a genetic report generally, and the first thing that you see is the gene name. And then next to it, you'll see the mutation, and then it will say what it causes. And we thought for researchers to find us and for families to find us, that we should have a name that that related, to what they're seeing on their paperwork.
Sure.
But it is very hard for donors. It's very hard for families to say the name. We recognize that for sure. And, even though obviously our Jules has this syndrome, but we didn't want to name it something like Jules Rules Foundation because, we decided from the beginning that this wasn't about her. This was more than just her. This was about everyone else, that when they received a diagnosis, they deserved more than just a pat on the back and good luck. And they deserved more than just one paper describing the syndrome. They deserved to have, They deserve to have as much information, support, and to be able to be involved in the research process as much as possible.
Sure. And it's really nice too, having many people kind of shoulder the brunt of everything. Like, I'm sure you're pretty much like what my wife would do, that deep dive into everything I need to know what's going on. And like after a point, you're just thinking to yourself, oh, it's exhausting to do all of that. But if there's multiple people that can help, at least at the start of it, to understand and be able to find pieces and work together for it, it's got to help make it a little nicer and a little easier than just you shouldering the load. And at the same time, I'm sure, and I would feel kind of the same, like, oh, this was hard for me to find all the stuff. So if somebody else has, OCNDS, then I already have the start. So here's what I've found, and then we can add together to help the next people join in.
I mean, when it's interesting, when we first started the foundation, I would say we had a 7-year plan. We were going to find one treatment, one cure, shut our doors, and be done. Very shortly afterwards, a friend of mine who also is in the rare disease space, who's actually developed a gene therapy, he told me, why do you think that? Parkinson's has 17 treatments and they're still going strong. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's true actually, that what I didn't know then, what I know now, is that we'll always be here at this point. And not because we won't find treatments and not that we won't find things that are curative, is that they won't always be readily available to everyone. There's no way we can get gene therapy to every single person around the world at this time right now with the way that it's set up. And so there will always be families that need to come to a place to learn what are the possibilities, what are treatment options, what are sort of more curative options like gene therapy. What does school look like? What do we do as far as, do we put them in a special school? Do we have a mainstream school? Those kinds of things. And then also just the support in general, that there's also the people that choose potentially maybe not to have any of those things for a variety of reasons, whether it's personal, religious, and those kinds of things. But people will always need support, that this journey is not the one that anyone set out to have. And there's not a playbook or a roadmap. And so we'll always need support and a place to go, and for doctors and clinicians or providers to come to find out more about how they can better support those that have Okur-Chung that are underneath their care.
Yeah. I was gonna say, even if there was something that worked really well for one kid, I feel like so many of the people that I've met, you could talk to 20 people with OCNDS and like you've got 20 different things, they don't sleep well, or maybe they do sleep well, but they have this or they have that, and all the different, so one cure is never, I don't feel like is ever going to really take everybody, but those little pieces are really nice to be like, oh, we tried this.
I think when we first started, we were trying to, one thing in the rare disease space and the nonprofit space is that, we're like little squirrels, and we're taking all of our, like I say, the dollars that we raise are like our little nuts, and we squirrel them away and only put them away for research, right? Because that's what we want to spend all our money on. But as we've grown over the years, we realize, and I invest also in a lot of early stage companies as well. And the thing is that you have to spend money in other places, capacity building. So, bringing on someone like Gabrielle Rushing, who is running our science program, some operational help like we have from Beth Chaffin, in order to grow and make our research even more robust. And that being said, so now we have 6 kind of focus areas. We don't focus all on them equally, but even something like advocacy, when we look at, and you were there, you went to Washington, D.C., where you were advocating at a federal level, letting people know that Okur-Chung is there. This is what our family lives look like. And when they have bills that come across their desks, whether maybe that's telehealth or funding for rare disease research and things like that, that they know why, that they should vote and put money towards those things.
I was going to say, there's faces or there's people behind it. Like
100%. It's so important to put a face to this. It's one of the reasons why even on our website, and we ask families if they feel comfortable to share their photo, because we have a place where it says Faces of OCNDS, where families around the world who have never met someone with Okur-Chung can go and look, and it's actually shocking sometimes how much they look alike. They're all adorable kids, but they all have a little something that's the Okur-Chung line through them that you can see. But it's so nice to know that you're not alone and to see other kids that have it.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, like, when you first started the whole thing, it was just you and your husband to get like started up the foundation, or
he was working, and so I was able not to work. And so this whole time I don't know if I do the foundation a service or not, but I don't draw a salary, but I work 7 days a week, and I have really for the last 10 years since we got the diagnosis. It took us 18 months to launch because we didn't want to sort of rush things. So I met with 30 to 35 organizations, big to small, old to new, to find out, what are some of the roadblocks? What should we, what should our path be? Those kinds of things. And then also at the time we were building our board, and there weren't that many parents at the time, or parents that really wanted to join the board at the time, or launch the foundation. And so we decided to take kind of a different pathway, which was we were going to look at kind of 8 different areas. So finance, accounting, advocacy work, government work, attorney, marketing specialty, things like that. And we were going to fill those so we could really have like a brain council for everything that we would need to go to, plus individuals that would go into their Rolodex and help us fundraise. And so that's actually just kind of out of necessity how we ended up building our board. And then at that time, when we realized that we really wanted parents to be more part of the decision making, that we really wanted them to hear about all the research that we are looking at, the pathways that we were going, any products we might be releasing to our families for them to use. So whether that was educational slides that we had to make it easier to talk to your providers, or something like Citizen Health, they would beta test it in the background for us. So we would make sure before we released it, it was something that was worthwhile for parents to invest their time in and their energy in. And you're part of the Parent Advisory Board. And so in 2020, we launched the Parent Advisory Board, our first one. We had an independent consultant that came in. So it wasn't me that was handpicking everyone. They went through an interview process. We did leadership training also as well as part of that. And so we've done that with all the other cohorts. We haven't done it with this last cohort yet, but we're still into just a few months into our term. But we really wanted to make sure that we were helping our parents become better advocates, that they would be armed with information. And really it's being able to talk about it comfortably, so because I think the better that we can all talk about it, the better advocates we can be for, fighting for services, for explaining it to family members, to helping our child understand, to fundraising, to affecting change like you were in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps us be a little more, we feel better about it and we feel comfortable talking about it. But so talk a little bit more about like the dual, you kind of wrote in that dual role in navigating. You're a parent of a child with OCNDS, but you're also the president of the CSNK2A1 Foundation. How do you navigate those two?
Well, with little sleep is the first thing, right? And now fueled by lots of coffee. But I think, I feel like I've been incredibly lucky that from the beginning, I was even traveling kind of all over Europe to meet families who had Okur-Chung, to learn from them, to help hopefully get them involved, just that this wouldn't be like US centric and English centric. And I've always been so humbled and blessed that people welcome me with open arms and welcome me into their home and tell me their life story. And I feel like that, trying to, even though I've talked a lot today, I do try to listen a lot, and listen about the struggles that they're having, what they need, what they want. And from the beginning, we have really strived to make sure that we have resources available in all languages. So any of our kind of more important documents, whether that's our one pager or sort of our only care guidelines that we have, which were written by Dr. Okur, we put them in more of a easy digestible way. We've translated those into every single language that is spoken by the community that we know of right now, which is 32 languages.
That's amazing.
And we also were kind of early adopters of having live caption translation on our family Zoom calls.
Yeah.
So that way anyone in any language can join, and they can listen or they can read kind of in their native language, and then they can speak in their native language, and everyone around them can use the caption translation to understand. And I think, I think what I've noticed about both lives is, again, just stopping and listening, or just stopping in the moment and taking even when Jules is having a hard moment, let's say, which we've had many of, during COVID I have never really experienced anything like it, where she was crying for 9 hours a day. She had her self-injurious behavior was unruly, like she was bleeding through her clothes.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
And it was devastating. Like, I just thought it would never end.
Yeah.
And really trying to figure out how to navigate that. And I think it was, being patient, showing, which always seemed like this is such a weak concept to me, but I think it works, which is self-compassion. I'm like, anytime anyone says that to me, but I do believe it works, that it is true. I think showing self-compassion with ourselves, and then again, those that are around us. And I think it's certainly made me a better parent or human, because I always say this, I think had this not have happened to us, I would have been a smug a-hole parent, just thinking that everyone was doing it wrong. It's like, oh, their kid doesn't sleep, they're just doing it wrong.
Yeah, they should do what I'm doing.
Right. So I think it's made me more aware of things like when we're looking at the foundation, at treatments versus kind of a cure versus care guidelines, or even now, which I'm really interested in, is using AI to transform daily care without looking at drug interventions and things like that. Like, how can we make a difference in our families' lives today, because they are incredibly challenging. And there are things that companies we partner with, one even being Citizen Health, that has now, an AI component, which I think makes our lives easier. And so those in the US, if they haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend trying Ari. It's like having someone in the trenches with you. It's really incredible. We're going through the conservatorship process right now with Jules, because she's 17 and that's what's appropriate for her in California. I understand that other places in the country, they have different mechanisms, and something else might be more appropriate for another family.
Sure.
But using Ari, putting what I had in my Mijo, which I really love, it's another product that we have available to our community if they'd like to use it. And then also Citizen Health, putting those together and putting it into Ari and Citizen, it helped me answer all the questions that I needed to answer for the conservatorship, and made it go so much faster. Because I can imagine, as you know, Eric, and I'm sure Miranda, your wife, knows, it's like filling out all those forms, which you filled out like hundreds of times. And so it made it so quick. And then I printed out my Mijo and the profile on Jules, and then I filled out all the questions using Ari and the information I plugged into it. And when we gave it to the attorney, I said to my husband, watch this. She's going to say she's never seen someone so prepared before. And basically we, did her job for her, that she couldn't believe it. We had already answered all her questions. And Honestly, it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the fact that there's this technology out there that can really make our lives a lot easier. Whether it's emailing doctors about new trends that you're seeing. So in Jules, it could be maybe we've seen 2 seizures and we haven't seen them in a really long time, or things like that. So
Sure.
It can connect, like with Citizen Health, it's amazing. And Ari, it can connect directly to your portal and draft the email and send it on your behalf when you ask it to send it.
So is
How
already
great is
something that we can, like a regular person could just go on and do, or do they have to be linked with something?
Yeah, you being signed up with Citizen Health, and then you sign up for an RE account.
Okay.
If anyone's interested that's listening, reach out. We'll make sure that you get connected. But those are the things that we're interested. Not only are we doing kind of everything else, right? Research wise, we have 7 drugs that we're testing right now that are already FDA approved to hopefully treat some of the symptoms of OCNDS. We are doing the gene therapy feasibility studies right now and going that route. We're trying to make sure that we're getting care guidelines for families, because right now care varies so wildly. Some people might have speech therapy once every 6 months, other people every 2 weeks, other people 3 times a week. And so we need to have more of a standard. Every family that I talk to, I learn about like all the different, types of care that they're getting in. And again, just the variation on how frequently it is. And so we're working on that. And then again, too, we're also working on just how we can make our lives easier on the day-to-day, because it is a lot.
It's nice to have that almost predictable, like it tells you, oh, yeah, you should probably do this. Oh, yeah, I didn't think about it. That's awesome, though. So looking at what you've built so far, is there a piece of advice you got along the way that would change the way that you approach the foundation's work?
I think what I realized getting into this space was that there's a lot of noise. And what I mean by that is, I think you could relate, is that when you have your baby, people will tell you, yes, you clean the belly button after they're born with alcohol. Someone else will say, no, you don't do that, right? And so people have lots of advice and lots of conflicting advice. And really, you have to take stock in this instance of our community, of what their tolerance is, what they want in their life, what they need, and then figure out our own path. And we say a lot, you'll hear Gabrielle now say a lot too, like, I did my due diligence. And it's like, yes, we do a lot of due diligence, right? We talk to a lot of people, we do a lot of research, and then we make informed decisions. And I think what can happen a lot is we're also so eager to help our kids and want to make a difference that sometimes I see that people just try something or sign up for something without knowing how that will affect their community, what a burden it will be on their community. So it's really, what's the best thing for our Okur-Chung family?
Yeah. I think it's nice too. I know when new things come up and we hear about them on the parental advisory board and around, like, oh, hey, we've got this new one. We want you as parents to just try it. We signed up for it. It was free for us to do, or, it was something that we think it's already gone through the vetting process when we hear about it as a parental advisory board from, I'm sure you, and there's Gabrielle and some others that have at least read about it, talked to people. And then what's nice is you as a parent can, like, in your head, like, okay, so like with rare diseases, I know the term that I heard from, I forget who even said it, but it was one that was like light bulb moment. Like, there's always those milestones. Well, miles a long way, no matter what you look at it. And so if you're looking at the mile of a person, they're going through their marathon of their life, like, that's a long distance. But someone did mention like inch stones, those little bits, like you had mentioned about your daughter saying mama. Our son, it took a while for him for mama, and you finally got mama and daddy. The daddy, when I come home, is one of my favorites. What does progress look like for OCNDS research? And what does a win look like for you guys in the foundation side?
Unfortunately, I wish that they were milestones for OCNDS research or just rare disease research in general. I think what a great way to put it, Eric, that it's really OCNDS research in stones. We have great ideas, amazing researchers. It's just amazing how long things take. I think what's great is that we do have a plan, and we're working towards that plan. And everything that we do, we try to say or think, is this part of our roadmap? Yes, there's so many things. You could study OCNDS in a million different ways, but is it really going to reach the goal is treatment, the goal is something curative, or the goal is more standard of care, so a better standard of care. And so if it doesn't really fit into there, then we're not going to fund it at this point. Because at this point, we are the #1 funder of OCNDS research in the world.
Yeah.
And hopefully one day that won't be the case. But as of right now, since we have very limited funds, we have to be really strategic. But things just they take a long time. Even our mice models, for them to have babies and to breed them, and then to characterize them to see sort of what symptoms are showing up in the mice when they have OCNDS. All this stuff just takes time, too much time.
Let's get this now.
Right? But we are in a good pathway.
Yeah. So if there are OCNDS families that are listening to the episode and want to get connected to the foundation, can you tell us what the families can do to get involved?
Yeah, first, if they have just been diagnosed and they haven't reached out, please register with the foundation. There's a place to register. We are the #1 kind of register of families around the world because we can take families in any languages. We have over 400 families registered with us now. So please reach out so we can get you connected, and for you to join our closed Facebook group, which is a really nice place to ask the whole community about symptoms you might be seeing or difficulties you're having, because really this is trial and error still, and getting input from others of what's worked can be really helpful. And then also knowing that you're not alone can be really helpful.
Yeah.
And I think too that there's other opportunities as far as participating in research. We can't do this without families' participation, and the more that we know, the better. And so, of course, we always say, please participate in Simon Searchlight, which is our long-term natural history study, which just shows the trajectory of the syndrome over time. So we know what it looks like when someone gets to 20 and how we need to support them. Also, Citizen Health is incredible because they gather your medical records, which I found out in California. I don't know where you live, Eric, is that actually I don't own our daughter's medical records or my own. And so it was really nice to actually have access to them.
Yeah.
And they have AI tools that can cull them for information that you can see. How many medicines have you had tried over time? What worked, what didn't work? How long were you on them? How long did they have this symptom for? And then the amazing other things, helping with IEPs, explaining to insurance that they've denied speech therapy, but your child, only has 60 words and things like that. So helping you formulate, they can help you prepare for IEPs. And so I highly recommend that individuals sign up for it. The way that it helps the foundation is that we get high level de-identified information back about the community as a whole. What symptoms are showing up that haven't been reported before? How are people, what drugs are they using? How are they managing things like that? So, it will be very helpful as we are going to test drugs in our patient population. We call it clinical trial, to see. You need to have things like endpoints, which means it shows over time what we expect for this drug to do. So, for example, if you started with 6 words and we expected at the end of the trial for you to have 10 words, that would be an endpoint. But in order to get those points in that data, we need to know where everyone's starting at. And then always on our website, we have definitely other opportunities for people to participate. We have a speech a study going on right now, because speech has really never been studied, even though it's one of the hallmark symptoms of OCNDS. And so we have the speech study that's going on that individuals can enroll in. And soon we're going to be doing a motor study, because motor actually hasn't really been characterized very well. And so a lot of our population crawled late, walked late. This will be a really important study also for kind of one, that people are aware that these are issues. So if someone is fighting for occupational therapy or physical therapy for their child, they'll be able to point to, yes, look, there's a whole body of work showing that this occurs in our population.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And as we're kind of wrapping up, for those, maybe the people that maybe just discovering the podcast, the foundation, what's a message you would want them to take away from this episode?
You don't have to do this alone. We are here. There is, no one wants to be a part of this tribe, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but your tribe is here, and don't be afraid to reach out. I know sometimes people could be afraid because maybe their child's symptoms are more mild, or maybe sometimes they're more severe, and so they feel like there won't be someone to understand. But this syndrome is a spectrum, and there is a match for everyone. And so I encourage you to be brave and to be bold, just to reach out.
Sure. I was gonna say the one biggest thing I know of more towards my wife's side of it is like, no one's going to advocate for you for the most part. That you go out, like, tell your story, advocate, and just lay it out. This is us. This is our child, and just be honest as things come up. And
Right.
I know one of the things I always loved is like, we don't know what we don't know. As parents, I mean, no one says like, oh, hey, here's your manual. Here you go. This is what we know. It's like, well, this is what my parents did.
The last thing I would just say is that every small act adds up. And I think Dr. Rushing talks about this a lot. She even got a bee tattoo because obviously it's, a bee that goes from one flower to another that pollinates an entire field. And so I just don't underestimate what one action can do. One participation in research and things like that, because in the end, they really do add up and make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on. If you guys are listening right now, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and listen wherever you listen to podcasts. And links to everything that we mentioned in the shows are going to be in the show notes. Any last word or anything for you, Jennifer, before we get going?
No, just thank you so much for having me on today, and for also taking the leap of faith and starting this podcast. It's really exciting. And and anyone that I haven't met before, I do look forward to meeting you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer.